We are live here on Tracking the Tropics. It is not a named system just yet, and it's still a bit scattered, but potential tropical cyclone 16 is taking aim at the Florida Panhandle a year and a week after Hurricane Michael ravaged the area. We're breaking it down here live on Tracking the Tropics. Hey there, everybody. JB Buno here with you, being joined on the right side of your screen by WMBB Chief Meteorologist Ross Whitley. Ross has many long hours ahead as they brace for this system there on the Florida Panhandle. But as always, we're going to begin here with Amanda Holly at the weather wall. Before we get to Amanda Holly, we want to remind people that this is a show to educate, inform, and make aware everybody to what's going on in the tropics. We are live to the Tampa Bay area, but we're also broadcasting live to the rest of the southeastern United States, including the Florida Panhandle. So everybody joining us out there, we know it's not hitting Tampa Bay directly. It's going to be hitting more of the Florida Panhandle. But for that part of the conversation, we're going to send it right over to Amanda Holly, live at the weather wall. Hey there, Amanda.
Hey there, JB. Thanks. Yeah, we just got the 11 a.m. advisory in from the National Hurricane Center. They have not named the system just yet. It is still rather unorganized. We're talking about an elongated area of low pressure instead of a center of low pressure, a well-defined center of low pressure. So that's why we're still looking at a potential tropical cyclone here, but it has strengthened and picked up some forward speed. So if you haven't tuned in this morning at all, check out the forward motion of this. Northeast at 22 miles per hour. It is racing off to the northeast, and we're also talking about a strengthened storm there. Maximum sustained winds right now at 60 miles per hour. So if this was organized, if we had a well-defined center, obviously this would be a tropical storm. It has the tropical storm force winds, but in terms of the semantics, we just don't have a very well-organized storm at this point, so we can't call it a tropical or subtropical storm. Regardless, though, we're talking about impacts to the Gulf Coast. That includes the west coast of Florida, that includes the Panhandle of Florida, and portions of Mississippi Alabama as well. Now, this is the latest track. This was updated just a few minutes ago here, and there isn't a whole lot of changes with it. Maybe nudged a hair to the south, but we have very good consensus in the models here, very good confidence that this is where the storm is going to go. It's going to continue to race off to the north and the east over the next 24 hours. We're going to already start to see impacts in the Panhandle starting in the next few hours, and Ross can talk more about that in a few minutes here. But this is 8 a.m. Saturday with the center of the storm possibly moving ashore somewhere in the central Panhandle there right near Panama City. 8 a.m. Saturday with maximum sustained winds at 60 miles per hour. The models do continue to indicate that we are going to see the storm organize. So we could still be looking at Nestor. Just because Nestor didn't form a few minutes ago, or we didn't call it Nestor a few minutes ago, doesn't mean we won't be talking about potentially Nestor over the next 24 hours. So we are still expecting the storm to make landfall somewhere in the Panhandle, continue to race through the southeast, Georgia, South and North Carolina, and then it's going to reemerge out into the Atlantic, merge with a front. And this timing here, we're talking about Monday being offshore. So again, a very fast moving storm. We're not going to have to deal with this one for very long, which is good news in terms of several different things. Rainfall. We're talking about the potential for some localized flooding, but the storm isn't moving slow enough to dump a lot of rain for it to accumulate. It's moving very quickly, so it's going to dump some rain and then move on and dump rain in the next spot. Here are the forecast models showing you the consensus that we have with potential tropical cyclone 16. Very good cluster here where the storm is going to go. There's a couple of outliers, but those are actually models that don't really pertain to this particular type of storm. So we're actually looking at this good cluster. You can see somewhere in the central Panhandle, kind of directly centered there is Panama City and Mexico Beach, unfortunately, but fortunately, this is not a situation like what they were dealing with 1 year ago. And models continue to spread out just a little bit there, but after that, impacts are really going to be the same with this storm. We're going to be talking about it holding its strength as it moves through the southeastern United States into South Carolina and Georgia and North Carolina as well. So we're talking about some good gusty winds up there in terms of the wind strength, but also rainfall, a couple of inches here and there. Maximum, I think, localized amounts were 6 inches, but most areas seeing between 2 and 4 inches. We still have tropical storm warnings in effect for much of the Panhandle of Florida, and that includes all the way down through Citrus County as well. So the orange color here, tropical storm warning, that means that those effects from the tropical storm conditions are going to start within 36 hours, and they're actually likely going to start later on this afternoon. So keep that in mind. If you have anything to do, you want to get those prepared. in the next hour or so if you're in the Panhandle. We're talking about a storm surge warning in effect as well, all the way down through Pinellas County and up just about to Panama City there as well, because on the eastern side of the storm, which is where we'll be, we're talking about that onshore flow. So the winds are actually going to be physically pushing the water towards the coast. That's where we're going to see that storm surge. Highest amounts would be up to about 5 feet just right in Citrus County there, and then from there down to Pinellas County, we're talking about 1 to 3 feet. So no, not the biggest storm surge we've ever seen, but certainly a threat with this system. The potential for you to see tropical storm force winds, it's not out of the question here in the Tampa Bay area. We're talking about a low chance to see tropical storm force winds. I do think that we could get some pretty good gusts in some of the stronger storms that move through, but otherwise the highest chance is going to be directly in that central Panhandle area where we think the center of the storm or whatever it may be will move onshore. So again, tropical storm force winds between 40 and 74 miles per hour. Now I think maximum sustained winds here the forecasts were for 60 miles per hour winds. So that's a good tropical storm heading in. I do want to go over just a quick look at future track here just to give you some time, the idea of the timing of the rain. This is just one particular model here, so don't take it with, this is the end all be all, take it with a grain of salt here, but we're already starting to see that light rain in central and north Florida there, as well as in the Panhandle, and that's going to continue, and at times it's going to get a little heavier heading in throughout the day today, and we're also going to see some very heavy rain here in the Tampa Bay area as well, heading in through later tonight. Check out the timing here. This is overnight, and you can see all of the convection. So this is the center of the storm, or where it will generally be at this time, and you can see all of the convection, the showers and the thunderstorms, and most of the wind as well is on the eastern side of the storm. So just because, the Tampa Bay area is generally displaced from the center of the storm doesn't mean we're not going to see impacts. We're certainly going to see some rain for the area, and certainly some rain for the Panhandle as well. You can see the cells there kind of making their way onshore. Bits of heavy rain moving through overnight tonight, continuing through Saturday morning. You can see in central Florida, we're seeing that heavy rain continuing, as well as in the Panhandle. And then the storm again continuing to race off into Georgia. But all of this rainfall, very beneficial for the area because they are in a severe drought in some spots. So we actually need the rain. But this is Sunday at 9 a.m. moving through the Carolinas. You can see all of the convection there kind of displaced into North Carolina. And then it's going to move offshore. You can see in the state of Florida, we're dry on Sunday, mostly dry there. So it's going to be a nice day coming into Sunday afternoon. It is not going to be a big system at that point. It's going to be moving offshore, and we can get on with our second half of our weekend. But that's the latest from the National Hurricane Center. Latest on the timing there, give you a little update on what to expect heading into today, tonight, and into Saturday.
All right, Amanda Holly in front of the weather wall there for us. Thanks a lot, Amanda. We'll see you in here in the Stream Center in just a second. Let's bring in WMVB's chief meteorologist, Ross Whitley. Ross, you're joining us from home. We were just talking about this a little bit off stream because you're getting ready for probably what's going to be a long Saturday for you, as this storm is going to be probably heading to your neck of the woods in Panama City. What are you guys bracing for there as far as the Florida Panhandle goes?
Yeah, regardless of how this develops, how it transitions, we're forecasting a tropical storm basically to hit our area, and that's the conditions that we're trying to prepare for. Obviously, the strongest winds with this system are located to the center and to the east of the actual center of rotation. So the hardest hit areas for are here is the Forgotten Coast area. So Franklin, Gulf counties, Port St. Joe, Apalachicola, Carabel back up to Alligator Point, and St. Mark's up in the Big Bend area. That's what we're concentrated most on, because the center, even though the center is going to go probably fairly close to Panama City, the worst of it is actually going to be on the east side of that. Without getting too much into the science of everything, the way this is all strengthening, it's more similar to what we would see with a system over the central part of the country. It's gaining its strength from temperature differences basically in the water and in the atmosphere, as opposed to just positive vorticity over the Gulf of Mexico feeding off of warm water. So that, along with shear, it's making this a very east side loaded system. And we're going to be in for the long haul here. We got rain already moving in to the area, and as that rain continues, we're expecting it to be a steady, consistent by this afternoon, breezy conditions by this evening, and gusty conditions as we work through tomorrow morning. And that's part of the reason why I'm going to be at the station basically from 1 o'clock today until the storm passes sometime tomorrow afternoon. And we expect conditions to improve pretty rapidly as the center does work its way through and then up toward the southwest uh, Georgia area. That's where things really should start to improve. Once we get past the center of the circulation, really not going to be much of the storm left. It is all east side loaded and north side loaded. And for us, honestly, the probably the best possible thing is that because this is so east side loaded, we're probably not going to deal with much in the way of severe weather. That might be something that you guys have to deal with down in Tampa with those supercell-like structures that develop on those feeder bands on the far east side of the system.
Yeah, Amanda Holly is now back here with us in the Stream Center, everybody. Again, for those of you just joining us, we're here live on Track in the Tropics with WFLA Storm Teammate meteorologist Amanda Holly and WMBB's chief meteorologist Ross Whitley, who's preparing to head into the station in Panama City on the Panhandle, preparing for what will likely be extended hours as far as their coverage goes there in the Panhandle area. Amanda, as far as what we're looking at here, intensification. Let's talk a little bit about it because there's a good chance that this never actually does become Nestor, the next named storm on the list for the hurricane season 2019. But as far as intensification goes over the next few hours, what are we looking at here?
Whether this is rain with a name or rain without a name, we're still looking at the same impacts. The National Hurricane Center keeping their chances of development at 90% for the next 2 days and the next 5 days. But, if it doesn't ever become Nestor, the impacts are still going to be the same. Everything that I just went through, we're still going to see the heavy rain in some spots. We're still going to see the chance for those isolated tornadoes, especially along the West Coast. That does include the Tampa Bay area. It's a very low chance, but anytime we have a landfalling tropical system, and especially if you're on the eastern side of it, you deal with the chance to see those isolated water spouts moving ashore. And I think that there is a good chance we could see one or two, especially with that band. If you remember Future Track I just showed a couple minutes ago, there will be likely a nice strong band that sets up over the Tampa Bay area for a couple of hours, and that's when we could see that tornado threat, and that continues up through the Nature Coast and the Big Bend as well. But, impacts are going to be the same. Rain, wind, storm surge, and the threat for those isolated tornadoes. I mean, even if it doesn't become named, we're already looking at wind speeds at tropical storm force. I mean, 60 miles per hour, that's well within the tropical storm force range. And the National Hurricane Center noting in their discussion just a few minutes ago that they do expect some slight strengthening in the hours to come, maybe 65 miles per hour. That was, I think, their maximum.
And Ross, you were talking about this a little bit with me off stream. It's really important to not overreact if you're on the Panhandle, even in the low-lying coastal areas there, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about storm surge 5 feet, and based on tidal ranges, that's, can cause some impact. But in comparison to other systems, it's really on the low end of impact. We're going to have beach erosion issues, we're going to have high wave issues, and we are going to have some coastal flooding. But all in all, this is one of those systems that you basically put your plan in place and you say, okay, am I prepared for when a bigger system comes along? We could have some scattered power outages with some gustier conditions, especially when you're talking about gusts as high as 60, possibly even 70 miles per hour as this does move inland. That's going to do some damage to some things and even hurricane weekend things because we are still dealing with the impacts here from what we went through a year ago. So some of those weaker trees that people have neglected to cut down that are still leaning and some of that stuff, possibly we see a couple trees fall and stuff like that. But this is going to be nothing compared to what we went through a year ago. We're talking about tropical storm impacts. And when you go through all of the model runs here, we note that yes, it's going to be strengthening over the next 12, maybe 20 hours. But once it gets relatively close to shoreline, we kind of lose this interaction of where this thing is going to be strengthening. And we're going to be seeing a system that's going to be falling apart as it comes ashore. And shear is really going to be doing a number on that as well. So that's all good news for those residents here in the Panhandle, because that means that likely the biggest impacts come down on our peninsula here, Port St. Joe, and then those two southern counties. Everyone else inland, really from Panama City back up to the I-10 corridor, probably dealing with stuff that's less than tropical storm, wind gusts 30, 40 miles per hour. We might have some convection help pull down some of those stronger winds, but in general, This is one of those things to basically test prep on. It's, hey, am I ready for when the big one does come? When we have something like what we had last year, do I have my plan in place? Do I have enough water for, 3 to 5 days without power? Do I have my food ready? Do I have the right plan in place? This is the kind of system to test all of that on. And in fact, we don't even have any evacuation orders or any planned closures of roads or anything like that. It's still possible that we get those, but not likely. So this is one of those things not to freak out at, just to test the plan. Put the plan in place and have it there, and just ride it out.
Ross, again, everybody, Chief Meteorologist Ross Whitley joining us from WMBB in Panama City. He's Skyping in from home. He's going to be heading into the station momentarily, and he's joining us here live on Tracking the Tropics. Everybody, it was 1 year, 1 week, and 1 day ago today that Hurricane Michael made landfall. Of course, one of the most powerful storms ever on record to make landfall here in the continental United States. Ross, I'm curious as to what the mood is there today, or what the mood is there like over the last 48 hours on the Panhandle. Is this more of a, for folks on the Panhandle there, for folks in the Panama City area, is this more of a why us again? Like, why is it that in back-to-back seasons we're seeing, a storm, even though it's not as powerful as Michael, we're seeing another storm that is basically taking aim at the Panhandle? Is it a why us kind of feeling? Why are they picking on us? Or is it more of a, this is nothing compared to last year, we're going to be fine, we're just going to be able to ride this one out? What's the feeling there?
A little mix of both. Some people feel that way, that, why us kind of situation here. But I think people have been relatively reasonable with this system. There is some of that psychological that's going on, because most people that did stay last year, for lack of a better term, or maybe this is the correct term, it's PTSD. They see a storm coming in like this and automatically go back to that last system that didn't happen too long ago, just a little over a year ago. And they feel, oh, Michael's going to happen all over again. And that's something that we try to hammer home as meteorologists, is that every system's different. Every impact is going to be different. For some people, this storm will likely end up being worse than Michael, especially as you go further over toward the nature coast, that kind of thing, as opposed to those on Mexico Beach. Obviously, this is not going to be anything like Hurricane Michael. So every storm is different. Every impact is different, which is why we really preach, focus on the impacts, not the storm. And overall, this is going to be a minor impact event. Some issues with power outages, definitely beach issues, some coastal flooding, as well as a storm surge, and some gusty conditions. But in comparison to last year, which I just said not to do, this isn't as much of a big deal when it comes to types of system. But yeah, I think it's more of the seeing that that tropical icon on the map and having that cone come right into the same area where people are just automatically jumping back to last year's storm. And it's not the same storm. It won't be the same storm. In fact, most people will probably go through this storm and they're going to go, wow, that was nothing. Some people are going to go through this storm and go, wow, that was really bad. It just depends on the location you're at.
Chief Meteorologist Ross Whitley joining us from WMBB in Panama City, along with WFLA Storm Teammate Meteorologist Amanda Holly here in Tampa Bay. I'm JB Buno. A reminder, everybody, that we are talking about this on Tracking the Tropics. The show is called Tracking the Tropics, and we are always monitoring everything, big and small, that is going on that could affect your livelihoods, whether it's, your Saturday plans or whether it's something that could be life-threatening. We're talking about all of it here on Tracking the Tropics. So this is a far cry from Dorian, Amanda, but still something that we're monitoring very closely. I want to talk a little bit about not even just the Panhandle, Amanda, but we're talking about what looks like to be as we look here at the watches and warnings, a pretty relatively large geographical area that's probably going to have a washout on Saturday, right? I mean, we're talking about, if you have plans here in the Tampa Bay area on Saturday, you're probably looking at a good amount of rain, but also, Mobile, Alabama, or, on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. I mean, you're talking about seeing a good amount of rain on Saturday. And as even though it's not going to be the strongest storm that we've seen in recent memory, it's still going to be one where it's going to, it's going to affect the first day of your weekend.
Right, and I think that that's what people are going to think about. Saturday, first day of the weekend, first half of the weekend, it is going to impact that, especially for the state of Florida. You can see there the icon. I'll go back so that you can see it one more time, but check out where the icon is and check out where all cloud cover is. Like Ross said, everything is on the east side and everything is on the north side of this system. So even areas like Mobile, after this storm makes its way past to the east of Mobile, Alabama, you guys probably won't see a whole lot, even in terms of rainfall. But Florida, yes, we are going to see that rain. Shout out to our digital producer, Heather. She's keeping an eye on some of the comments there. And a lot of people are asking about Disney. They're headed to Orlando this weekend. I know people have a lot of plans. Halloween Horror Nights is a big thing going on right now in the Disney area. And in Disney, you have things going on all day long. So, if you're headed to the parks this weekend, Sunday is going to be a much better day to get out there, enjoy it, do the rides, do whatever you have to do. Saturday, especially in the morning, we're going to see the rain move through. We're going to see the gusty winds and some of the thunderstorms. So, not the best day. It is going to impact at least the first half of your weekend, but the second half is going to be completely different. I mean, night and day, Saturday to Sunday. So, be prepared for a wet first half of the day on Saturday, and then conditions will start to improve from there.
Everybody, Chief Meteorologist Ross Whitley is so dedicated. He is Skyping in from home, and I was smirking just because was that a dog that hopped up on there on your lap there, Ross? That was your dog almost became internet famous there in that second, but
yeah, he's wanting to go outside and go for a walk. That's what he's over here biting at my collar, trying to get me to go take him out for a walk.
Well, before we let you go, Ross, just again, what you're going to be focusing on for your viewers there on the Panhandle. You have a responsibility, of course, to inform them, but also not to scare them, right? I mean, you're just going to deliver forecasts that are meaningful and accurate to folks. But what are you going to be communicating, you think, in the hours ahead as this potential tropical cyclone 16 kind of bears down on your region of the country?
Yeah, absolutely. Just to break down the timeline one more time, we're going to have our rain move in here relatively shortly. We already have some showers into the area, so rain will continue to pick up through this afternoon. As we head into this evening, that's when I expect the winds to start picking up. This is an east side loaded storm, so really the circulation off to the east is where you're going to feel those tropical storm force winds moving in probably a little after 9-10 o'clock tonight. That's central time, and then we'll continue to see things going downhill as we head into the early morning hours. By 9 a.m., that's when we're going to see the center of circulation moving ashore with a likely weakening cyclone as it does move into the Panhandle and then eventually beyond. Overall, our rainfall totals are going to be in the general 2 to 4 inch range. Some of the convective properties may allow for 3 to 5 in isolated locations. We're going to be talking about the storm surge from Indian Pass up to St. Mark's. That's really more of our area. Once you get past the Big Bend toward the Nature Coast, then you're getting out of what we're going to be talking about here specifically in the Panhandle. But Franklin and Gulf counties, those are the areas that we're most concerned about taking the brunt of this system. And really, it's the coastal areas and our little peninsulas. We have St. George Island that sticks out, as well as the Port St. Joe Peninsula. Both of those could see 50, 60 mile per hour wind gusts with this system as it nears the shore and then moves inland. Everywhere else, we're probably going to be talking about 20, 30 mile per hour winds. Some gusts up to 40, maybe occasionally seeing a gust up to 50 with the heaviest of rain bands. And then even, as Amanda pointed out, what you guys will be dealing with down there in Tampa is that isolated tornado threat with those feeder bands on the northeast side of the system. That's usually where we concentrate on seeing the potential for an isolated tornado. So we're going to be monitoring that situation as we go into the night and beyond. I think the greatest potential for tornadoes is going to be the Big Bend and then further off to the east, as that's where the more isolated convection will be with those bands on the east side. But overall, this is a minor type of impact, but we are going to see some impacts, which is why we're going to give it our full of attention and go in and basically just ride this out and give that information out as necessary. So for tornado warnings, or as the center is coming in, or if we have any particularly strong banding that's coming in, and continue to post those warnings and any latest information that does come in. If we get a stronger system to come ashore or a weaker system to come ashore, that's something outside of our realm of the forecast at the current moment, we're going to be conveying all of that as well.
Chief Meteorologist Ross Whitley at WMBB in Panama City. Ross, you got your shirt and tie. You're ready to, are you heading right into the station? You ready to go in?
I'm going to take the dog for a walk first, and then I'm going to.
All right, everybody. So for Chief Meteorologist Ross Whitley, you'll see him on air there on WMBB, our sister station on the Florida Panhandle in Panama City. And WFLA Storm Team meteorologist Amanda Holly. Thanks a lot to Amanda and Ross for providing us with this very important weather update as we monitor potential tropical cyclone 16. I'm JB Buno. We will have an afternoon edition of Tracking the Tropics here in just a couple of hours. We'll have an update for you as the advisories come out from the National Hurricane Center. We'll be monitoring the latest developments with this storm, let you know what the latest progression is with our team of meteorologists here tracking it live on Tracking the Tropics. So one more time for Ross, Amanda, I'm JB. Thanks so much for being with us. We'll see you in a couple of hours, everybody, here live on Tracking the Tropics.
Thank you for watching Tracking the Tropics.